Hello guys. With this video we start the ServiceNow Pro Solutions channel. Throughout the videos that we will upload, we will see the explanation and operation of this platform, with a presence in a large part of companies around the world. So it is also a platform that has a great need for professionals capable of carrying out maintenance and development. This last part will be what we focus on in the channel. Seeing small parts of theoretical and explanatory content, and focusing mainly on examples and solutions to typical day-to-day problems that we may encounter working in ServiceNow. Without further ado, let's get started. Today's video will be an explanatory video in which we will see one of the most important topics to understand when starting to work with ServiceNow. We talked, of course, about the difference between coding on the server side and on the client side. It is a simple topic to understand, but if we do not understand it from the beginning, it can cause us certain problems in our first developments. We will divide the video into two parts. In the first, we will see the main differences between a script that runs on the client side and another that runs on the server side, explaining the benefits and impediments of both cases. In the second part of the video, we will see on which side the main scripted objects that we find in ServiceNow are executed, making a short explanation of each of them, and briefly seeing what their main uses are. And after this little summary, let's get started. As we have mentioned, in this first part we will talk about the main characteristics and differences of the scripts that are executed on the client side, and those that are executed on the server side. The first point will be to see where each one is executed. In the case of those scripts that are executed on the client side, it will mean that they are being executed in the user's browser. They are more related to everything visual and what the user can interact with within the page. On the other hand, in the case of scripts that are executed on the server side, as their name indicates, they will do so on the server. So we can deduce that they are intended for internal processes and functionalities that affect the data stored in the database. The second point we will talk about is in fact the information with which each of these parties work. On the one hand, on the client side, we will only be able to access with these scripts the information that we have loaded on the page we are on. That is, the information and data that have been loaded in the HTML of the page. Understanding this, we can see one of the main limitations that we encounter when working with client-side scripts, and above all we can understand that these scripts are designed mainly to modify the DOM of our page and not to modify data in the database. On the other hand, in the scripts that are executed on the server side, we will work with all the information available in the database of the instance in which we are. However, they will not have access as such to what is happening on the page the user is interacting with until a call is made to the server. Therefore, we can deduce that these scripts will be designed mainly to process data, whether with calculations, information management, security, etc. Which brings us to the third point. Whereas we just said, a script executed on the client side cannot modify the database, unlike a script on the server side that can. And finally, the fourth difference that we will find will be something that we can also deduce from everything discussed so far. On the side of the scripts executed on the client side, they can be triggered directly by iterations that the user has with the browser, whether changing information, loading a page, or any other interaction that exists. And on the side of the scripts executed on the server side, they can only be launched if there is a trigger that executes them, if it is called explicitly, or if any modification is made to the database. Once we have seen the main characteristics of both sides, we will move on to the second part of the video. As we have already talked about, in this part of the video, we will group the main objects that use scripts within ServiceNow. seeing if they are executed on the client side or on the server side. To practice, we will leave a few seconds to think about the answer before revealing it, and after this we will give a short definition of the object and tell the main uses. So let's start. The first will be an easy one. From where is a client script executed? Yes. That's it. Very good. A client script allows us to execute client-side code when a client-side event occurs. For example, a field changes, a form is loaded, etc. It will be very useful for us to do some things like manage the visibility of a field. We can hide or show a field based on what we need. Manage the editability of a field. We can make a field read-only or editable through code. Manage the mandatory nature of a field. We can make a field mandatory or not. Assign values. Show messages, etc. We can assign values to a field, taking into account that these values will only be saved in the database when the user saves the record, as well as displaying informative or error messages among many other possibilities. The second type of script that we will see, without a doubt, will be one of the ones that you will use the most as a ServiceNow developer. We are, of course, talking about business rules. But where do you think it is executed? Did you get it right? Let's see. A business rule will allow us to execute code on the server side when a query is made to a database, or when a record is created, updated or deleted. We can choose the execution conditions and when it should be executed, but that is something we will see in future videos. Some of the uses that a business rule can have are the following. Security when consulting or modifying information. We can check if the action for which the business rule is being executed is being carried out by a user with the necessary permissions. And if not, abort the execution. Condition-based code trigger. As we have mentioned, we can execute the business rule code based on conditions. Control the order of execution of various actions. We can determine the order in which the actions are executed at the moment in which they are triggered after a certain event. These are just some of the most frequent and business rule-oriented uses. But the possibilities are truly unlimited and they will depend on the requirements we have and our knowledge of programming. The next thing we will see will be the UI policies. Where would you say they are executed? Let's see it. Where did you say? Client side? Server side? Yeah. That is. They are objects that run on the client side. We can use a UI policy to dynamically change the behavior or information on a form, based on conditions. In most cases, we can use a UI policy to replace a client script and in a way that is much more oriented towards people without a background in development, as these are objects that generally do not require a script for their configuration. And like client scripts, these types of objects are widely used for manage the visibility of a field, manage the editability of a field, manage the mandatory nature of a field, among other things. Let's move on to the next one. Access controls. Where are they executed from? From the server side. That is. An access control or ACL will help us determine what conditions a user must meet in order to create, view, edit, or delete a specific table, record or field, through roles, conditions or script. They will be the most reliable way to control the security of our instance. They are mainly used for the following. Protect information, so that only the users who should be able to see that information. Restrict the editability or visibility of a field. Restrict record creation. Control who can delete a record. Now we will look at the scripts include. Can you guess where they are executed? A script include will help us to store JavaScript functions, which we can use from any script by executing it from the server side. A script include can be invoked both from the client side and from the server side. So if we use it correctly, it can be one of the most useful objects that we will find in ServiceNow. Script include are mainly used for unify functionalities that are repeated in the same script. Group related functionalities in the same record. Execute code and collect data on the server side, requesting it from the client side via AJAX. And now we will move on to see the UI action. When we talk about a UI action, we are referring to all those elements with which we can interact within a page, such as buttons, links, context menu and lists. A UI action can be configured to run on both the server and client sides. We must keep in mind that although they can be executed on both sides, there will not be a UI action that is executed at the same time on the server side and on the client side. We will have to choose which of the two we want our UI action to be executed on. It will be very useful for us to do some things like creating objects that perform custom actions, mark objects in a list and perform actions with those objects, open records from links, open links in a form. Here we are going to leave this first part. In the next video we will see 5 more elements widely used in development in ServiceNow. These 5 elements will be the following: background script, workflow script, UI script, action script, and fix script. I really hope you liked the video and above all that you found it useful. If this has been the case, please like and share. See you in more videos at ServiceNow Pro Solutions.